Welcome. Welcome to Elder Scrolls Spotlight, a podcast about roleplay and role-playing inside the Elder Scrolls Online MMO-RPG. As always, I am your host, Mikey, your friendly neighborhood commentator. And tonight I have with me a guest who hails from across the pond. He's a friend who, like Shadow HVO, I haven't spoken to in a while, but I'm really glad I had the chance to do so now. Our guest is a fella who plays a steadfast Nord loyal to the Pact, and I'm happy to say that this will be my first episode where I conduct an interview with a Nord RPer, and someone who actively invests themselves in the Skyrim community. Speaking of which, he's been a part of the ESO-RP community ever since the release date of the game, and has helped shepherd RP along with rallying Nord RP here on the EU server. Once the leader of the Ebon Drakes and still a community coordinator in Pact and Skyrim RP, he's still standing as a beacon of RP for the Pact community. Tonight we have with us Thane Brynwulf Mer-Bane. And welcome to the show, or actually no, welcome back, I should say, to the show. How you doing? What's been new?
Hello. I'm doing fine actually. I've had a very pleasant morning. I mean, the girlfriend left, so finally have the house all back to myself. The dog is laying on the couch a couple of meters away from me, feet I suppose. I had myself a good bowl of cereal, so, all is well. On a personal front, all is good, and on the roleplay front, all is great, just the same.
That's good. Now, for the listeners who may not know what I'm talking about, we actually recorded, I'd say 2 months ago? Yeah, 2 months ago for this episode, but we're actually redoing this episode just for you guys. Make sure that the quality's good, and, well, I was pissed off with the way things were the first time, and a whole bunch of technical hoo-ha happened, and here we are now.
Under no fault of my own, I just want to say.
Right, this is Brynwulf. The only thing Brynwulf did was hex me, but that's pretty much it. You and your hexing. But anyway, taking it from the top, and since you're already familiar with the format, we'll just go ahead and start with the first question. Where are you from? How old are you?
I am from the Netherlands, the lovely province of Brabant. Just a bunch of farmers and windmills and cheese, I suppose. And I am, as it stands, 22 years old.
22. From which province?
Brabant. North Brabant.
I have no idea how to say that, but okay.
It's alright. That somehow reminds me of one of the new Civ trailers, like for one of the races, and it has like the Netherlands race in it. And it's just horrific to watch because supposedly it has like faction abilities, and the woman pronounces the polder and Radio Oranje just in such horrifying ways it makes me cringe.
And where is this from?
The new Civilization game, Rise and Fall DLC.
I haven't played Civ since Civ 4. How far away is that from Holland? I don't think I ever asked you.
Oh, the province Holland. Oh god, I think it's I wouldn't know in miles, but let's say like my province is very much down south. We're pretty much the only province that neighbours Belgium and Germany, together with Limburg, and Holland is further up north.
I see. Gotcha. And this is all countryside that you're living in?
Yeah, I live in the countryside. I think Amsterdam and stuff, like in Rotterdam, kind of the popular tourist places of the Netherlands. They're like an hour and a half drive from me. I'm kind of just, a countryside boy, if you want to call it like that.
You're a hillbilly.
I'm a hillbilly. I'm a Dutch hillbilly.
No, that's cool. I'd rather live in the countryside than I would in like the more crowded places.
I would say I wouldn't be able to handle just how busy the city life is for me.
Have you been to the city? Obviously, you've been to the city, but do you go to the city on a regular basis?
Yeah. I mean, I work as a painter in construction, so I go over the Netherlands quite a lot through manners of places, and the city is one of them. I go there quite regularly with my girlfriend as well, and for a day it's fine. You go shopping and and it's very crowded and it's very busy. But I can understand that in the very much like Rotterdam, I can really understand the atmosphere and the appeal of it. The water, the canals, the little restaurants at the water. It's very appealing. It's very beautiful at night, I suppose too. but it just wouldn't be for me. I like
Okay.
my cows, I like my dog out in the yard.
I get you. My question to you then is you don't sound very Dutch from the other Dutch people I've spoken to. So what sort of witchcraft are you using?
Well, when I was young, I managed to capture a little English kid, and I actually took it now. Now, I don't know. I've no clue why I supposedly, I'd say speak more, more with an English accent than most of the Dutch people do. I'm gonna guess it's because even when I speak Dutch, I have a tendency to speak without dialect or without accent as well. It's called formal Dutch, or whatever, however you want to name it.
Accent neutral.
Accent neutral, and I guess that because I speak accent neutral most of the time, it allows me to adapt and take over accents quite well when I speak different languages. I can only speak English though. I suck at German, but
Okay, I kind of know where you're coming from. I have a friend who's from Sweden. She knows, obviously, they know English as well. But when she speaks English, she sounds just like she's from London. But when she speaks Swede, wait, did I trip over myself? I think I did. When she speaks English, she sounds like she's from London. When she speaks Swedish, she sounds like she has a potato in her mouth. So
it's cool. It's what we call in the Netherlands. When a lot of Dutch people try to speak English, you are not very, very well learned in the language. Not that I am, because I don't speak it overly well, but when a lot of Dutch people try to speak English, we call it potato Dutch or potato English.
Well, you seem pretty damn well versed in it. Like, did you pick? Like, how did you first come across English? Was it like through TV and video games, or did they teach you in schools? Sorry, I'm being an ignorant American here.
It's fine, really. It's fine. Definitely schools and video games and TV. Like I have the luck that I am, of course, raised in a generation that, like, where my parents' generation is raised to a German language. We, of course, are raised to the English language. So for me, it's a lot easier to understand and start speaking and start, mingling in the English language.
So your parents know a bit more German than you do.
They know a lot more German than me. I cannot speak German for the life of me. I can understand German because German and Dutch are relatively close to each other in terms of how to speak it, but I wouldn't be able to confidently speak German. That's what my girlfriend can, so she can translate everything for me when we ever go to Germany.
Why is that? Like, did the teaching curriculum change from one generation to the next?
After, like, my education isn't very high because not to say that construction workers are stupid, but I purposely chose to go for a more practical education, and including in my practical education, languages weren't exactly top priority. I had Dutch and I had English, and Germany, Spanish, French. They weren't all part of my my accent or the things I had to learn to pass school.
I see. Okay. Then before we brushed it though, you said you learned a little bit of English from video games. So how did you get into video games? What was your first video game? Actually, let's start with that.
I wouldn't be able for the life of me be able to recall the name of my first video game. But when I was, when they first released the PlayStation 1, I was very lucky and very privileged that my parents were able to buy it for me. And my twin brother, of course. And we received with it at the start a couple of games. One of them was a fighter game, which me and my brother really enjoyed. I don't know the name of it. However, one of the games that I probably played the most, and for me it's one of the most memorable games of my childhood, I know I played a lot and wasted perhaps a lot of hours on, was Spyro the Dragon.
I remember that game. I only played Spyro 2 though. I never got to play
I played the first one.
This was back in the days when you had to have a memory card, right? And like whenever I played my Spyro game, I always had to start from the very beginning because I never had a memory card and I never got past like World 2 or something like that.
I have to admit, it's been so long, I wouldn't be able to remember how it all worked back in the day. I do remember very vaguely that now that I think of it, I never got far into the game for what I remember. Now, that could be because at the time I was just very lousy, very poor gamer. Or it was indeed the fact that it kept resetting itself and I kept doing the same thing over and over again for, as a child, you don't really mind, or you don't notice as much, I suppose.
Yeah, they're remaking that series. I can't remember when they're going to be releasing it. I think that alongside Crash Bandicoot, they're going to try and do a rehaul of that, which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
I tried the new Crash Bandicoot game. I have to say, it was quite good. It was quite amusing, but I don't see myself revisiting old games. Perhaps in a new skin I will, but I know I'm not much of a guy for nostalgia. I have to admit, I'm not like a guy who holds too much onto nostalgia for some reason.
I hear you. Plus, it's also a gimmick to get that nostalgia game or that nostalgic feeling for you, so you go back and play their other games, and they make a bit more money off you.
Have you ever played Ratchet and Clank though?
Yes,
that was one of those games of my childhood as well, Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, those two were the major platformers of the PS2.
Yeah, I think so too. And for the Xbox, it was of course Halo. Oh, I love Halo.
I think the only Ratchet and Clank game that I can remember specifically was Up Your Arsenal. I never got that title until I was a bit older.
a lot of puns and a lot of nasty jokes escaped us as children.
Yeah, and they got away with that shit. So those game developers deserve medals for that. But moving on, was Ratchet and Clank your favorite game?
Ever? No, my favorite game ever. Well, it's so hard because you don't really think about it all too much until people of course ask you. But a game that pops to mind when people ask me, what's your favorite game? A game that pops to mind almost immediately is Dark Messiah, Might and Magic.
I've never played that game, so pretend I'm an ignorant pleb and explain to me what this game is about.
I haven't. Oh, it's such a shame. I think I consider it one of probably the best story-driven RPGs on the market. Perhaps no longer today, but at a time, like we're talking years back, because I think it was first released on the PC before it was remastered for the Xbox 360 when the Xbox 360 was just released, and that's already some years ago. You play this guy called Seraph, and from what I remember from the story, he's kind of like an apprentice of some sort of scholar, and you just send to your everyday business, and all of a sudden your city becomes engulfed in this overwhelming attack by monsters and demons and imp-like creatures and hell knights and whatever have you, and you kind of grow to the game. With this expedition force, you go to this ruin island where you try to unravel everything, like the source of power and everything else. And you fight orcs, and you fight all sorts of creatures, ogres, spiders.
So, moving on from there, the next logical step would be, how did you get into MMOs?
When I grew older, I had a cousin who was very heavily into video games at the time. And we would come over for his birthday, just to drink coffee with the family, I suppose. And he was always in the back room playing video games. Me as a young guy, of course, I'm interested, and I'm watching him play this game. And without my knowledge at the time, it was World of Warcraft that he was playing. And I found it a very, a pretty looking game. You have your little human warrior, you had a dwarf, you had an elf. So me, as someone who was already at the time quite into fantasy, was really digging it. And when I had my next birthday, he actually got me the game. And at the time, of course, the game comes with 30 days. So it was kind of my first way into the MMOs, and I don't think I ever left it after that.
Was this WoW vanilla?
It was kind of, I think I got it when they announced the Burning Crusade, so I never actively played vanilla. It was kind of around when they announced the Burning Crusade, so I kind of started playing it properly when the Burning Crusade patches began to launch into World of Warcraft. So I dare say the Burning Crusade is kind of where I got my start, because I don't feel I got too much experience into vanilla to say I'm a vanilla player.
Where did you stop?
Stop at World of Warcraft.
Yeah, when did you move on? Or do you still go back and play?
I was about to say, well, I have a love and hate relationship with World of Warcraft, I suppose, but I have that with a lot of MMOs in general, a lot of games. I played for a couple of months, when they do a new patch or when they bring a new DLC or a new expansion, and then I'll play for a couple of months. I do some raiding. Unfortunately, at the time, the really high-end stuff wasn't doable for me because, I wasn't an elitist. I never am an elitist, never have been, probably never will. It just wasn't doable for me to do the high-end raiding, and if you couldn't do the high-end raiding, my bad, and you weren't all too great in PvP either, there wasn't a lot to do in MMOs. So eventually you kind of start watering it down, find a new MMO to play, and start playing that. That's how I kind of went through a series of MMOs. World of Warcraft starting, then you go to Lord of the Rings Online, then you hop back to Age of Conan, or you go to Age of Conan, then you go back to World of Warcraft Online. You go back and forth.
Okay.
At least I do.
Well, no, I understand that because it seems to be within the nature of other players as well, just to hop back and forth between MMOs. Again, they always have that one MMO that they go back to. My question to you is then, did you find MMO-RP on World of Warcraft then?
I did. Of course, at the time, I wasn't into roleplay massively, so I had no clue what they were doing. But LinkedIn was interesting enough. And, being curious as I am, I just asked, what are you guys doing? And he said, I'm role-playing. Eventually, when I grew a bit more confident, I made attempts to join them because the people I encountered were very lovely, and they realized that I was an absolute scrub in the game. So they helped me kind of understand the game more, first and foremost. And then slowly but surely, when, I would ask, would you guys be able to help me with a dungeon, or would you guys like to do a dungeon? They would say, I'm sorry, mate, we're role-playing. And from that on, I kind of began to understand, so what's role-play then? Is it like an activity you can do? Is it something the game does? And they explained it to me, and I slowly but surely made my first character, as OP as that character probably was, but...
How old were you? Let me ask you that.
Oh god, I wouldn't be able to pinpoint it with accuracy, but I think around give or take 14, between 16, somewhere around those times. I kind of on and off. I think my very scrubby roleplay was at least 14 years old. I kind of began to understand a bit more at 15, and at 16 I kind of felt, I'm not a great role player, but I understand the basics, I suppose. Role playing at 16 sucks ass because, a lot of the role play is 18 plus, so it was hard to find a crowd, you could hang around with.
Yeah, I definitely understand that point because a lot of the guilds that make up these crowds, well, not a lot, but most of them have like an 18 plus rule to them, don't they?
A lot of them do, yeah. Which is fair, but...
Yeah, of course, given the sort of maturity that they go for and the sort of maturity it requires to roleplay. My next question to you is, you mentioned like feeling confident to RP. What exactly did you mean by that? Do you mean like you weren't sure of your ability, or you weren't sure about the nature of roleplay getting into it?
A mixture, I suppose. Like, because first you don't exactly completely understand what the activity is. You don't completely understand what roleplay is about. Secondly, of course, they know precisely what they can and can do character-wise, and you have no clue. Like lore, lore of a game wasn't a thing for me back in those days. It's a pretty game. Oh, cool, there's a dragon. Oh, cool, there's a troll. Like, what the hell do I know where those trolls came from? Because they just looked cool to me. So it would take a while before I understood, so these races come from this, and they do that, and there's lore behind that, and that's probably frowned upon, and that probably is acceptable. So, you need to learn a lot of things of the site before you capable to, to in brackets, be a decent role player in the eyes of many. Because otherwise people are just going to dismiss you as, he doesn't know his lore, or he's god moding, or he's power playing, whatever have you. So, there are things you probably want to know before people start, as rude as it is, accepting you into the fold.
What was your first role-playing experience like? I imagine you might have, when you first dipped your toes into it, sounds like it was WoW, but when you really got into it, it might have been a different experience altogether, right?
Yeah, my very first was definitely World of Warcraft. Like I said, if I look at them now, at least from what I remember, they were, of course, absolutely shit, at least on my part, The powerful paladin blessed by the light, who makes it's a light bringer look like a freaking apprentice or a freaking kid, I suppose. But I suppose the days when I consider myself a decent role player, I was playing the Draenei on my Draenei character, which I still play I still play today on World of Warcraft, and I have a chance. And I, at the time, was dabbling a little bit in Age of Conan, which, as a 16-year-old at the time, was absolutely shit place to be. But I don't know, what can I say? It was gritty. Yeah, you could be naked, you could be everything. What was that not to like for a 16-year-old boy?
Of course. Back in the old days.
All I knew, I could be a great-looking barbarian warrior saving naked ladies. What the fuck did I care?
So let me move on to this question. This will probably have you walk down cringe lane. But can you remember what your first ever RP character was like, and would you like to share?
Oh god, my first roleplay character was a human paladin, because I played the Warcraft game, and in Warcraft, you have the Warcraft 3 and stuff. You had a game of, but another game. You had a campaign regarding, with Uther Lightbringer and with the Lich King, and all the kinds of stuff, Prince Arthas, and they were so cool. At least in my eyes, I wanted to make a character that was kind of like young Prince Arthas, but had the strength and the ability of, the mentor. He's a Lightbringer. So I made this paladin. Don't precise. I think I also named him after Boromir from the Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings is probably still one of my most favourite movies, and perhaps universes in general. Of course, the name Boromir was mistaken, so I think I called it Boromir or something like that. I changed the letter at the very least, but everyone could understand where I was going at. And it was just, he was blessed by the light. He could summon the greatest ghost or whatever into battle. His power was unmatched. He could shoot destructive beams from his arse, if you will. The character was unbeaten in all accounts. He probably fought a god at some point too.
And what sort of adventures did you go on this character?
I joined a little mercenary band, and it was just very casual stuff. The guy made little events where we would clear out goblins, or we would fight bandits. Of course, at the time, not being too experienced, it was all fine for me. I didn't really care for plots and anything of the sort. I was just happy to do some general roleplay where I could show off my great character. So nothing went very in-depth or very complicated, I suppose, at the time. At least not for me. But, being younger, having school and stuff, I didn't really stay up all too late. So perhaps I just missed a lot of times.
Okay. How did you come across ESO then?
I started when I got the Xbox 360. Was it the Xbox? I don't. Oblivion was released for the 360, was it not?
Oblivion was released for the 360. Yeah, this was back in 2005, I think. Man, that seems so long ago.
I know, right? I got Oblivion from the cousin I mentioned, and he bought me Oblivion for my birthday, and I began playing it, and being drawn to fantasy, I really enjoyed the game. I probably didn't play it really good, now that I look back to it, but I really enjoyed the game, and as I grew older and I began understanding the games more, and I began becoming more experienced, of course, with roleplay again and with lore, and I began delving more into the lore behind the Elder Scrolls through the Oblivion game, and of course I began Googling, other more Elder Scroll games, and I found Morrowind. I never really got into Morrowind, but I kind of stuck around Oblivion for a long, long time. And then, of course, a couple of years later, Skyrim gets out. Yay, because I really like Skyrim. And then they tell me, hey, ZeniMax is making an MMO for the Elder Scrolls. And at the time, I was actively role-playing on World of Warcraft. I got more experience into roleplay at the time through Conan, and I grew older as well. So I think, that's great. I really think fondly of the games. I remember the games fondly. So the setting really appealed to me through at least the games. I think, it would be so great to be able to do some roleplay on that game. So I jumped at the opportunity, and here we are.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the Elder Scrolls series itself for a moment. Obviously, you being the big fantasy kind of guy that you are, what is it particularly about Elder Scrolls as a series that you like?
I like the races, and just the general feel for the universe. I thought that the races were very nicely laid out. Their lore is very individual. They have very cool-looking aesthetics to them. Of course, they're all inspired from, in real mythologies and races and past, times, like Bretons looking like the French knights, and the Norse, of course, being, Norse Viking inspired, if you will, perhaps with a bit of Celtic to them. The elves being very nobility and very proud, like most elves generally tend to be in a lot of universes. The Khajiits, being desert people. You have the Red Guards being also desert people, like the Arabians. So it had a very nice divide where it made every race feel unique. And I thought it probably helped that the quests in the gameplay, the quests in the game itself, were very appealing. The story in the game was very appealing as well. That helped grow interest into the universe of the Elder Scrolls. And of course, when you get more interest, you start going to Wikipedia, you start reading a couple of things like, what are the Nords, or who is Martin? And as you start reading just about the game, you of course get sidetracked, and you started reading about lore that was apparently written long before you even knew the game existed. And you begin learning more and more, and as you learn more, you become more interested and more invested into it, I suppose.
Okay. This next question is a bit of a weird one. It's because it just popped in my head right now. But what kind of feeling did you get when you realized that, the lore is so much more expansive than you realized? Or like, the lore extends beyond this game, Oblivion. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I think I understand what you mean. I mean, for me, of course, first and foremost, when I found out that they had multiple games like Morrowind, of course I wanted to play Morrowind. Arena and stuff were too old for me. Like, I would never be able to get into it because I am a little bit of a graphic whore, to flatter myself. I need the game to look really good, not necessarily really good, but at least up to standards. I'm not a game that can appreciate a game for the gameplay alone. I need the visuals to match. But I played Morrowind. I have to say, Morrowind at the time, it didn't hold my hand too much, but I guess that's what a lot of people really liked about Morrowind, to some degree. And from there on, I just... the fact that it had more to offer, you knew, there's so much invested into this already. I was thinking, are they perhaps ever going to make a movie out of this? Are there books about this? You Google if there were any books. At the time, there weren't a lot of pages, but there was something, and at least you had the Wikipedias and the in-game stories to read through. So it kind of just dawned on me, and it kind of just engulfed me to the point where, much like the Lord of the Rings Online, you have to applaud the creators and the creative minds behind it. Mm-hmm. That they are able to create such a breathing universe that really feels unique, and really feels, as if it could have existed. Like, everything that you want to know is there, that you really have to applaud to for it, and it's kind of mesmerizing, I think.
So when it comes to lore universes, I think you said Lord of the Rings is one of your favorites. I would hazard a guess and say Elder Scrolls is also one of your favorites. Do you have any others?
Hyborian Age, like Age of Conan. Conan Adventures, if you will.
Okay, so I take it that you've also played Conan Exiles.
I have, yeah.
What do you think of it?
I like the premise of it. I think it's overall a decent game. Of course, with a lot of games, it isn't what you, of course, initially expect from it, but that's kind of what people always do. They expect the groundbreaking game that's going to change everything. It's going to be the best game ever. Of course, it didn't prove to be that. I like the game for what it is. I think it's a decent game. I hope that still are going to continue to develop it. My only issue with the game is kind of more a mechanical standpoint, but I have it with Rust as well. I have it with a lot of those type of survival games. unless you make a server with a lot of friends and you kind of set boundaries and agreements, it's too hectic in terms of gameplay value for me to stay and endure it for a longer time. Because I would just get annoyed when I leveled a character. I made a great looking hut, I suppose. I got my skills up. I log out for the night. And I look in a day or two after because I've been busy and my entire hut has been, well, torn down. People painted shit hat on the walls, so to say. Everything that I built and worked on is ruined, and you have to start over. I get the appeal of it, but at the same time, I think the irritation from it just kind of ruins the gameplay for me.
Okay. So let's flex back over to ESO again. When you got into Elder Scrolls Online, right? What were your expectations walking into it? Because they tend to differ from or vary from person to person. Some people were hoping for Skyrim Online. Others were not that hopeful. What was it like for you?
I think I was lucky that I went into it with the expectation of expecting World of Warcraft in just a different, outfit, if you want to call it that, like a different universe. Of course, I had hoped it would have a lot of the Oblivion and a lot of the Skyrim and Morrowind mechanics to it. But in the back of my head, I thought, it's not a singular game. There are going to be sacrifices made mechanically to make it work for multiple people and to turn it into an MMO. So in the back of my head, I was luckily expecting World of Warcraft with Oblivion and Skyrim mechanics put into it where such is plausible. So to that end, I do not think I've been disappointed by the game at all. People say the gameplay or that the game was disappointing, and I have to disagree. I think from a game standpoint, it was quite innovating, it was new, it tried to do things differently. Of course, perhaps those things weren't appealing as some people would have liked or would have hoped to, but I think in terms of freshness and for a breath of fresh air, the game managed to do what it set out to do. I think the quests at the time were great. Of course, there was the complaint, of course, when Tamriel wasn't there, we couldn't really interact with people of opposite factions. That was definitely a complaint, but I don't consider that disappointing of the game itself, at least the core game. I just thought it was an oversight from the developers towards the roleplay community. But as the game, in terms of gameplay, I don't think it's disappointing at all.
Okay. I believe Dragonbones was released this week.
Yes, it's a shite expansion. There we go, I said it.
You said it? Okay, let's get into that. What didn't you like about it? Potential spoilers ahead for those who haven't played yet.
I have to say, I didn't do I have not enjoyed the DLC massively so far, but I think it was poorly advertised. This is my eyes. Perhaps again, I was too hopeful. I was expecting too much, but you don't, in my eyes, make this big announcement saying you're going to release a DLC called Dragonbones that supposedly in ZeniMax's very own writing says is a Nordic-based dungeon DLC, and then nothing of the dungeons and nothing of the DLC says Nord, except for the fact it's about a dragon priest and a dragon, and you get a dragon priest looking set. Like the dungeons have nothing to do with Skyrim except for the dragon priest. I just found, don't call it a Nord themed dungeon then, because except for the boss, nothing is Nord themed about it.
Not only that, but the dungeon itself is located, I think one of them was located in Bangkorai, which, oh my god, last time I checked, this is not Skyrim. Why
yeah,
is that
like
there?
I said, it's in regions that, of course, the Dragon Wars and stuff, they got a lot. Like Tamriel was pretty much overwhelmed, of course, by the needs and at the time the Nord Conquerors and the dragons, like they were everywhere. So there's no complaining about that. But call it like a dragon priest team, and don't raise the expectation that I can expect a DLC pretty much centered around Skyrim and the Nord people, and then give me that shit.
I hear you.
Because I was hoping it was going to be the build-up to potentially the reveal, or perhaps the build-up, as I said, towards a Western Skyrim DLC. But alas, it doesn't seem to be that way.
I think a Western Skyrim DLC is way off. I definitely think it's a definite possibility, but it's going to be way off. I don't know why.
Probably. Well, we're first probably going to get Somerset, so we'll see, I guess.
It'd be interesting to go to Alinor. The only problem I have is, like, how are you going to do it? You know what I mean? If you're a Nord from Pact and if you're in Alinor, well, anything goes at that point. You're slaughtering left, right, and center.
That's kind of my gripe with One Tenreal, I suppose, in general. You have a game that as highlight has 3 banner war, which I think is very nice. You know, it kind of gives the feel that you can play a royalist and you can kind of have the faction pride that I personally really enjoy. And then they make One Tenreal, and you start noticing, it's the same with Fardenfell, you start noticing a lot of the stories, a lot of the quests become very neutral in development, very neutral storylines, very neutral story arcs. And I think that's a bit disappointing, because you have Fardenfell, where 3 of the houses on Fardenfell are aligned to the Ebenhar Pact, and barely anything on Fardenfell in the expansion hints towards the Ebenhar Pact. And I just think, that's a missed opportunity. But I guess it's mechanically done, because, it wouldn't make sense for people to, go to Fardenfell if it had Pact banners hanging everywhere.
Well, not only that, but this is kind of the same trap that WoW got itself into, right? Like, you originally had Horde versus Alliance-oriented storylines, but now I think, ever since they haven't really delved back into those storylines, not until, I think, Legion, I think it was, that they started hinting at, the Horde is rearming themselves with whatever it is that they found.
And of course the new expansion coming on, Battle for Azeroth.
Right. So it's kind of that same. Now, this also happened in SWTOR, right, where you had Empire versus Republic. Then with each succeeding expansion / DLC, it was mostly neutral-ish. It never really highlighted Empire versus Republic again.
Yeah, so, and that's disappointing. I can understand that they do it because as a player, of course, it makes the stories a lot more interesting when you feel that your character has a say in it and your character gets appreciated and has a role in the stories. But I would have preferred to see that, for example, the Fardenfell expansion, that you would see at the very least more Pact presence, kind of confirm the Ebenhar Pact is still a thing. War is still a thing, so I would have preferred if there's only like Pact soldiers and Pact regiments and Pact forts and whatever have you. They kind of still give this sense, the war is still going on. The 3 banner war is still a breathing, living thing. It's still there, but now it just takes a backseat. It's almost completely ignored. I would almost find it regrettable if we go to Somerset Isles, if it's going to be the new DLC, and we're going to see nothing of Queen Irene's and a rule. I think that would just be disappointing.
I think I would be right there with you. But with the way things are going now, how do I put this? It seems to me that Elder Scrolls content hasn't really diminished in terms of an overarching trend, right? But in terms of story-wise and adhering to what it originally set out with, it's probably not going to retread those grounds again. At least I don't think so. Does that make sense to you?
I'm afraid that you're going to be right. From what I gathered, they wanted to, you want an MMO where you wanted to feel faction pride and you want to be, I'm with the Ebenhar Pact and I'm with the Covenant. But that was probably one of the biggest criticisms the game had as well, because people, of course, wanted the neutral game where they could all hold hands and dance around the fire like Oblivion and be merry about it. And I feel that ZeniMax is starting to cater a lot into that direction, because they feel that content-wise, it's a lot easier writing, it's a lot easier to pull people in, and it just probably adheres to the largest audience.
And which is a shame, but at the same time, I can kind of understand it. The factions themselves, the races that are put into these factions, besides being geographically related, because, Morrowind is right next to Skyrim and all that. They really have no business dealing with each other. I would imagine that, say, if you take a look at Nord culture and then juxtapose it towards Dunmer culture, they'd be at odds severely, considering that, the Dunmer and the Heart of Lorcan is reportedly
on the Red Mountain.
Right. And Nords have an intense worship or intense devotion towards SWTOR, the equivalent, right? Or like,
I have to agree. Some of the factions, like the writing on the factions, could have been better. But again, that's kind of where mechanics take way before things making sense, I suppose.
Yeah. If I had to do it, I would probably group the factions up more so as a mer against men sort of deal, because there's always been a tension between the human races and the races of elves that seems to permeate throughout the centuries. It could be within the first era or the third era. They still have this, I don't want to say biologically, but yeah, let's go with that word, hatred towards each other because of the way the lore is structured, right? Like what happens in the monomyth, where some of the Elnofe who still cling to that ancestor worship, they go on and devolve into elves, and those that don't eventually become men.
Well, I guess the issue ESO has, like people want the PvP because it's a mechanic that cannot go unnoticed or cannot be dismissed in an MMO. People want faction pride, which at least I really like, because I like making loyalist characters, because I like the mechanic and just the roleplay of it all. And the issue I think Cinemax faced, you have a universe that doesn't have a clear black and white feel. It doesn't have a clear good versus evil sort of mechanic. But you still want the PvP, you still want the loyalists, and you still want the fraction, I suppose, like the friction between one another. So they had to make choices to make it work, and given the layout of ESO and what they had and what they could work with, their options were only so limited, and they probably rode with the pedals that they had.
I can kind of understand that, but in regards to your point about PvP, that kind of went out the window once battlegrounds were introduced. It's not massive though. It's not. They didn't for all the ideas that they had for like siege warfare and such. Which I've never really seen that in other games before.
I have to say I think the Alliance War was kind of pushed on account of Guild Wars 2. Sorry. I played Guild Wars 2, and a big selling point for Guild Wars 2 was the world PvP, like the big map where you could claim outposts and forts and stuff. And there was like a turning stone in PvP at the time, because of course you had the battlegrounds and stuff. But before that, there wasn't any massive maps where you could PvP across with forts, so you could claim siege equipment and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite freaking dyslexia. Like that was a new thing to the scene, and I guess that ZeniMax noticed that, and they felt, it's such an acknowledged thing now. It's almost mainstream to add it into their game as well, because otherwise they would miss out or feel, our PvP system isn't on par with Guild Wars 2 system. So they added and they made Cyrodiil for it.
At the same time, imagine all those Oblivion fanboys that would learn that they had to go and make make mayhem in Cyrodiil,
Yeah.
I don't know. I know a few quote unquote imperial patriots that were like, yeah, I don't feel so good about looking at Bruma the way it is.
No, I agree. Like I think ZeniMax had to. Well, if you do the Alliance War, go all in on it, or you should have kept it just neutral. Not necessarily neutral, but just race bound. Like let the Nords be Nords and allow the Nord role players to fill that in however they please. Let the elves be elves, and let the Khajiits be Khajiits, and let the Bretons be Bretons. Kind of just allow the races to remain within their own niche.
I agree with you there, but it is what it is. I do hope that they revisit faction conflicts at some point, but it's doubtful.
Yeah, I hope so too. I really hope so too.
So moving on then, next question is, and boy, did we go off on a few tangents, but that's okay. How did you come up with the character that you have in ESO? We have Brynwulf Mer-Bane. Where did he come from? Tell us about him.
Brynwulf Mer-Bane as a character, it was released, and I had this place. I always liked the Nords, not because I'm a Viking fanboy, as many people probably think I am, but I know I just like the appeal of the Nords. I like their culture. I like the mythology behind the Nords, and I think, I'm definitely gonna make a Nord, and Skyrim, of course, greatly helped motivate that. And I think, first I thought, what sort of Nord do I want to make? And Nord's being quite, stubborn and prideful and chauvinistic, as probably shown in a lot of the Skyrim gameplay and lore and quest lines. But, I kind of want to make a chauvinistic Nord. And I think, just being a neutral Nord, kind of like, it works, but I like the tension. I like the tension roleplay that is war roleplay, because I think in war there is no good and wrong. There is no, you're wrong, you're good, what you do is right and what you do is bad. There is nothing like, it's only a grey area in war, and I find that to be a very appealing thing to roleplay. Like the conflict, the troubles, the aftermath, the infliction on the person itself who endures the war. So I think it's very interesting roleplay. I want to make at least a warrior, and I want him to be loyal to something. And of course, there was the Ebonheart Pact. So I made Brynwulf an Ebonheart Pact loyalist, and I just began role playing him from there. His first idea, was that he was to become a mercenary with a bunch of other friends of mine who were all going to make these mercenary Nords. And that then later changed into Nords that were probably soldiers to the Ebonheart Pact. And we began role-playing that at the very least. And that slowly but surely developed through roleplay and projects and storylines, to the point where Brynwulf is sitting now quite comfortably.
Why is Brynwulf loyal to the Pact?
Well, Brynwulf, first and foremost, is loyal to the Pact pretty much because Yoren's Cult King. Of course, Brynwulf as a character was at first very skeptical of the Pact. It's the formation, because, for the first time they had to work actively together with the Dunmer, which, as you said before in this podcast, weren't always from the greatest with the Nords. The Evragonians, which are pretty much strangers from most Nords. They haven't interacted with them too much. So they weren't off to a great start, and Brynwulf, being very chauvinistic and being a character that lays his trust first and foremost in his own people, was suspicious of his new-found allies. But given the fact that Yoren proved himself to be a capable leader, Yoren proved himself to be, in Brynwulf's eyes, not necessarily blessed, but Yoren has the support of probably the most influential group of people in Skyrim, and that is the Greybeards, who summoned the Ashen King from Sovngarde himself to aid Yoren in defeating the Akaviri invasion. So therefore Brynwulf was like, oh my god, the Greybeards assisted this king, and if the Greybeards brought down one of the greatest heroes in, Skyrim history, who is Brynwulf to argue against that Nord? He's probably equal to the Dragonborn then in Brynwulf's eyes.
Right. And you can't really argue, considering that it's the Greybeards themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Ashen King too, but I mean, I would say like the Greybeards wield more power in Skyrim than any old king when you think about it.
Yeah, and they probably are the wisest Nords to walk Tamriel. So their word for Brynwulf is law. So he does. And his parents, at least his father, was, a very good-hearted Nord. And Brynwulf as well. Like, he puts the independence and the survivability, or the survival and the endurance of his people before everything else. And Brynwulf saw and realized that if we are to endure, if we are to keep our independence, and if we want Nords to remain as we are, pride and true, we have to walk this path. As troublesome that path may be throughout, the journey itself. Down the line, if you do the quest, I apologize for any spoilers to people who have not done the Pact Zones. If you take the Rift, for example, again, Yoren gets aid or meets the spirit of Iskramor and 500 himself, and that probably travels around, Tamriel. Brynwulf hears of it. I don't think any true son of Skyrim or daughter of Skyrim is able to dismiss that the greatest heroes and influences on Skyrim that make Skyrim what it is and the strength that it is able to dismiss that they, pretty much granted their permission and their value to Yoren the Skull King. So Brynwulf doesn't dare to, question it either.
It's a pretty great moment when Iskramor shows up. Spoiler alert again, but whatever. This podcast is full of spoilers. I think the moment Iskramor shows up and really Yoren's reaction to him showing up is probably what sealed the deal for me and what made Yoren a good king in my eyes. Because Iskramor shows up and he's like, yeah, you did great. And the first thing that comes out of Yoren's mouth is, Iskramor, I am not worthy. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy, he's my guy. I like this guy.
Yeah, exactly, and it proves that Iskramor finds Yoren worthy. That I don't think you as a character, not as a Nord roleplayer, can dismiss that. One of the greatest kings, the greatest king to ever live in Skyrim, the greatest person of importance to the Nords, gives Yoren the Skull King, his blessing, so to say. And I find it odd that perhaps not even the entirety of Skyrim says, Iskramor stood beside King Yoren, the Ashen King, Hrufgar, stood beside King Yoren, the Greybeards stood beside King Yoren. Why don't we all?
Not only that, but it kind of takes away from Svargrim, I think that's his name is, the Western King of Skyrim, right? It kind of steals authority away from him, considering that he had, to our knowledge so far, we're not exactly sure what he's got going for him in terms of power base. I've always imagined, anyway, from this sort of standpoint, that Western Skyrim is a backwater, thanks to, that sort of, I would say, inactive leadership, if that makes sense, compared to King Yoren, who's always out there doing shit.
It's hard to tell because we know very little of Western Skyrim, but Western Skyrim has always been quite not necessarily loyal, but has always kept good ties with the Colovians. So I dare say Western Skyrim is very Colovianized. It's very modernized, and Eastern Skyrim has the old halls as they're named in lore. Like the old halls are pretty much the cornerstones and the foundations where Skyrim first rose from the ground. The big old stubborn Nords that claim to tradition and claim to the ancient past. And that's the Eastern Skyrim. So Eastern Skyrim to me is probably the most filled with loyalists, stout, shore-bound Nords, where Western Skyrim probably has become more loose and more open to influences from other races and nations.
I would agree with you there. The only counterpoint I would raise against that is the Reach and Markarth, which I know that the despot of Markarth has been raising hell, and they haven't really addressed that, but yeah, he's been raising hell ever since he came into power. And considering the Reach's proximity to the rest of Western Skyrim, I don't know if they would just allow Western Skyrim to go on about its Colovianized business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to tell what Western Skyrim's at a minute. I'm guessing that Western Skyrim is still very much Skyrim that we used to and what we think of it. It just hasn't, I don't think it's against Yoren. It just it's probably not against the Pact, and it's not the case that Western Skyrim would ever launch an assault on the Pact, because then they would launch an assault on half of Skyrim and probably their own kin. Just don't mingle in the war effort, at least not noticeably. And I'm guessing if Western Skyrim ever is made a DLC, that we're probably gonna see, the as disappointing as it perhaps is, the big baddies that ZeniMax likes to toss around in pretty much every DLC when it comes to enemies. The Richmond giving Western Skyrim hell, and you as the hero, of course, have to help Western Skyrim. Probably Jarl, what's his name?
The one in Falkreath.
Yes, Jarl Svargrim.
No, Svargrim is the king. But you're talking about the Jarl in Falkreath, was it?
Oh, no, sorry. I was just meaning if there was ever going to be a Western Skyrim DLC, you probably have to aid King Svargrim then with, right, liberating or aiding Western Skyrim against any potential, Reach influence or Reach war going on, which, already kind of shows with Falkreath DLC. Indeed, we already see that the Reachmen are pushing into Western Skyrim. So I'm guessing that is going to be, the case that if there is ever going to be a Western Skyrim, the Reachmen are probably going to, again, as overused as it is, enemy number one. Yeah. But it makes sense because the Reach is, of course, massive, and the Reach probably is. It is the fact that the Reachmen are not able to unify themselves under a single banner. But I'm guessing if they ever did, the Reachmen are probably able to conquer so freaking much of land that they can literally proclaim themselves the rightful ruler of Tamriel.
I would agree with you with that, yeah. But moving on from that tangent, what is Brynwulf's backstory like? Where does he hail from? What did he learn about growing up? How did he get to where he is today?
Well, Brynwulf was born from a leaf that fell from the Kind's blessed tree, and Kind blasted with her tears, and Shul brought him into this world as his very own son, and now he walks Skyrim as, son of Shul and Kind, kind of sort of like a Hercules figure. Nah, John.
I was about to say, is he able to breathe fire through his nostrils?
Yes, definitely is. He is the Dragonborn. No, Brynwulf as a character was born in Dragon Rest Hall, which is a hall that I, as a roleplayer, made up myself, which is located in the Zeril Mountains. It's close to Warwickstead and the Melton, kind of like in that region. And he was born there, and the hall itself was home to like a number of clans and warriors that could just go there, have a drink, go to the market that was located with it, enjoy their stay, build a settlement or build a house near, and kind of just, it's kind of like how Warwickstead and stuff began, and just, a little settlement with a hall, and it slowly would grow into something. At least that was the plan. Unfortunately, that never happened because the hall would eventually, through a conflict when the parents of Brynwulf died, it burned down, and that left Brynwulf homeless and, mostly without friends, except for a few exceptions that managed to survive that onslaught and the burning of the hall itself and the settlement. And those warriors, including the young Brynwulf, who would then in turn become, guided and was pretty much raised to an adult by these warriors, would venture into the Rift and venture into Eastmarch, where they would join properly the ranks of the Ebonheart Pact. The ranks of Yoren, because at that time in the story, the Pact isn't officially formalized, and they would join Yoren in his crusade to reclaim Windhelm after the sacking, and then they would go aid Yoren into the Ikviri invasion, trying to repel that. So Brynwulf as a character has been with Yoren, not personally with Yoren, but with the warriors that Yoren possesses and commands to liberate Skyrim into the formation of the Pact ever since it began. And from that, Brynwulf began, soldiering. He began fighting for the Ebonheart Pact in Cyrodiil fronts, at home, wherever, he was necessary. And eventually, he can't just grow into the role that he has now. He began as a soldier. Eventually, of course, he would prove himself in battle as, a considerable warrior in his own right and a tactician, even though a lot of people probably think that he's stupid because he's a Norse, again, to preach justice from the Dunmer against the Nords, because the Nords supposedly have all pebble brains. And of course, Brynwulf wasn't, a fair ally in the start as well. He didn't think a lot of the Argonians and the Dunmer as well in the start. He was probably very racist, or he is racist, was rather racist in the start of the roleplay. But through the years and the continuation of the Ebonheart Pact, and of course the tragedies and the troubles and the hardships that the Pact faced, you began to appreciate the Dunmer and the Argonian allies for what they are. And I think that turned him to a more fitting person in terms of leadership. And eventually, through those qualities that he, of course, had to learn and had to accept in the long run, he would become the captain of his own regiment after proving himself several times in battle, called the Ebon Drakes. And from the Ebon Drakes, there was a guild that I led for several months to, I think, more than a year even. I think probably 2 years, if I think back to it. He would eventually, through story, when I began, becoming more and more invested and taking more and more on me for the coordination and the help of the Ebonheart Pact community. I think, given the series that we've done, and given the roleplay that I've done, I managed to put Brynwulf in such a place that a lot of the people in the community knew who I was out of character, but also knew of the character, what he had done and what he had achieved in his lifetime, that I decided, luckily with a lot of support from good friends, from wonderful community members, that I would make Brynwulf a Thane, and I eventually managed to do so, and have been using the Thaneship as a role to provide more and more for the community in terms of series and events. So Brynwulf as a character went from this almost untrusty mercenary, loyal to the Pact, and loyal to Skyrim, loyal to only Yoren himself. He would grow from a merchant loyal to Yoren, slowly but surely loyal to the Pact, then proved himself in the Pact, before he would eventually receive the permission and the responsibility to begin leading in the Pact himself. And with the more permission and the more trust he gained through his roleplay and through his life, he became more loyal towards the cost, because if you receive a lot of responsibility and a lot, the supplies and not necessarily the power to sustain that, you have a lot more to lose if you fail. And because of it, Brynwulf just became more loyal, more determined, perhaps more vicious as well, in the pursuit to victory for the Ebonheart Pact.
So you mentioned it before, but I want to ask a question about this. You mentioned the Ebon Drakes. Talk to us about that guild, what it was like leading it, what its premise was, and all that stuff.
I've always enjoyed military roleplay, probably something you've gathered. I like the grittiness of roleplay. I like the comradeship. I like, the soldiers sitting down at a campfire talking about life and facing, the hardships and the horrors of war together. I think that makes for some very interesting stories and very interesting characters, and kind of brings out like the human nature of people in war, because it isn't something you can just easily put in a single picture. It's so dynamic, it's so in depth. Everyone has their own reasons why they fight. It's kind of like what Tolkien once said in one of his wonderful books, is he does not appreciate the sword and the arrow for the sharpness of the sword or the swiftness of the arrows itself, but for what they defend. And I think that is a value that I think is absolutely great to roleplay with, because it adds a purpose to the character. So I think, I really want to roleplay a military group, because at the time we were missing such in the Ebonheart Pact community. And we roleplay guards before, but I think, guards only get you so far, and playing guards becomes a bit difficult, because it demands a lot of coordination, of player versus player interaction. And unfortunately, most of the time, the things you face, and you probably know about it as well, is as a guy, you pretty much are the person who have to make people pay for the consequence of their roleplay. And that is a bit of a finicky and troublesome thing to do. So I think, I'm going to dismiss that, and I'm going to focus purely on the military. And that's why I eventually called into the life the Ebon Drakes as a regiment, and I managed to find a lot of like-minded people, and we would begin role-playing the Tree Banner War more in-depthly. We wanted to give it more of a face in roleplay rather than just something that was happening in the background that people weren't talking about in the 7 roleplay. We wanted to give the Tree Banner War an actual face through the guild and through the roleplay and through campaigns and through series and everything like that.
And I was in the Evandrakes for a little while, not too long, but when I was, we did a small faction-oriented guild plot where you essentially had DC versus EP, was it?
Yeah, we had two of those. We had the first one, which was in Crackle, which was in Crackle, which has become known as the Battle of Copper Road, where we wanted to, in characterly, we were given the mission to try and, I wouldn't say upper hand, but try and block the supply chain from Bankrai, like from the Covenant, through Crackle to the Cyrodiil, to kind of weaken and starve out the Covenant front, so that supposedly, of course, nothing of it would have any effect in roleplay at all, but for story purposes and for morale and goal, the idea was that if we managed to stop and blockade the supply line from Bankrai into Cyrodiil, then the Covenant would be weakened in the long run, and the Pact was able to take valuable positions in Cyrodiil from the Covenant hands, because they wouldn't have new men, they wouldn't have new supplies, and they wouldn't have rations in the long run. So that would give the Pact an upper hand in the war. Of course, eventually we were driven back by the Covenant players, as we should, because we can of course never stay around for too long, because eventually you cannot drag on a series for longer than it has to be before it becomes dull and before it becomes stale. And after that, a couple of months later, we did another one, which was called Ghost of Copper Road officially, because we didn't lose, but we didn't win either. So we went for another campaign where we wanted to, dismantle or try to harass the Covenant borders to lower the morale and strike fear into the hearts of the people in Syria, not in the Covenant, to, again, harm the Covenant and to boost the morale and boost the stance of the Ebonheart Pact in, the overall story. Of course, those are things we can never affect, but we want to try and we want to think that we as players are able to affect the war by doing those things. And they were really great. I really enjoyed them. I have to do absolutely right when I say big shout and a big thank you to everyone involved, especially Ashlorn for the first one, and Bjorsen also for the first one and the second one. Those are players from the Covenant roleplay community, and I probably couldn't have done any of those series without them. And from what I gathered, they were very well received, because we made a tug-of-war system for them to try and make them work the best we could, because of course PvP is a troublesome thing, and trying to do roleplay for it is also very difficult. But it was really great, and I have very fond memories of it, and we will probably do more in the future, but we probably, as it stands, we're gonna do one against Silmary Dominion, but like I said, we don't want to attack the Covenant 3 times or 4 times in a row, because if you attack too many times, it becomes stale, and it becomes almost cliche.
Right. Not only that, but eventually you'd start climbing up the target list, and pretty soon you'd be enemy number 1, and you might piss off the wrong people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And what I liked about the war is the commanders that played for each side kind of have slowly but surely now have some, I wouldn't say vendetta, but they kind of value each other as enemies for what they're worth, and it's pretty much on their agenda to, one day I'm gonna best you, Ashlorn, or one day Ashlorn is gonna do his best to best Brynwulf, because Brynwulf of course left him, not defeated, but his pride was damaged when Brynwulf managed to, of course, give the Covenant a good beating.
So, taking it back to Brynwulf then, were there any influences in his creation? Like, obviously, playing the game Skyrim and understanding how the Nord culture works up close was one influence, but were there any influences that he might have taken from, say, other games or previous RP characters that went into his creation? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. It's a bit of a tough question. I don't think I necessarily based Brynwulf off anyone in particular, but I wanted to kind of make some sort of, a conquering character, a character that has leadership, that has a role that not necessarily has a lot of sway, but a character that has a purpose for the community. So to some degree, I consider Brynwulf pretty much a very too big for his own good quest giver. And in terms of character inspiration, of course, like I said, the Skyrim played a big role. I think in terms of leadership inspiration, he took quite a bit, I suppose, from Ulfric Stormcloak, and a bit probably from Conan as when he was a king, and all sorts of influences. But I don't think there is one character anywhere that jumps out and says, if I were to compare Brynwulf with someone, I would have to compare him with him. At least I wouldn't think of anyone off the top of my head. He's pretty much just a mixed match pot of different concepts put into one.
Okay. Then, would you mind walking us through a significant event that changed Brynwulf? Like, for instance, if you had to point at an event that was a line of demarcation in his growth, like this was Brynwulf after and this was Brynwulf before, what event would that be? Be it in his storyline or in RP, either
I would definitely say, in terms of character development, because where Brynwulf was raised, was raised among these warriors, and his life was really carefree, and he never suspected that the independence of Skyrim or that his lifestyle, his Nordic lifestyle, would ever fall into question, would ever be harmed, would be put under threat, so to say. So I think a life-changing moment for him was definitely when he heard the news that Windhelm was sacked, that Yoren, the Skull King, or the would-be Skull King, was going to try to reclaim it, and from that, of course, the Akaviri invasion, dismantlement. I consider that a turning point for Brynwulf because he began to realize something that I guess a lot of Nords know, and a lot of Nords realize as well through their years, that Skyrim, like his people, is everything for him. It's no longer just about Brynwulf. Of course, he wants his legend to grow, and if he dies, he wants to die a memorable death. That years and years down the line, warriors from Skyrim are going to sit down and say, have you heard a tale of the heroic Brynwulf Mer-Bane? Like that, of course, would be his dream. But he wants to ensure that Skyrim remains pure, and that it remains everything that previous heroes and previous legends like Isgramor and the Ashen King and Hrothgar and Harold made it out to be, because they shaped Skyrim, and Brynwulf would never would never want that image, that their pride to ever be faltered, ever be harmed by people and sources that have sought to discredit it in the past and probably will again in the future. So under Yoren and during the events of the build-up of the game, like that you read about the Akaviri invasion, I think he realized that he needs to man up and he needs to carry his responsibilities if he wants Skyrim to live beyond itself, and especially now that he's older. He's reaching over his 40s. He's managed to do some things in life, including having several children. He wants to leave behind a beautiful Skyrim, a Skyrim that's unchallenged and unquestioned, and that people will not walk over, not just for himself and his legacy, but of course for his children as well. So the picture from Brynwulf being this ruthless mercenary that cares only about his own legend and his own glory has slowly but surely shaped into a man that became a Thane and realized the word Skyrim is bigger than just me, it's bigger than my legend. I have to make sure that Brynwulf has to make sure that that legend in the Skyrim remains what it is for all Nords to come, so that all Nords continue to be raised by the values and the pride that he was raised with as well.
It sounds like he would make a pretty good Stormcloak.
I definitely, if Brynwulf were to live in the Fourth Era during he would be so loyal to Ulfric to no end. Like Brynwulf, he appreciates them up and he values them up, but Skyrim comes before everything else.
Okay, then I got a question for you. How does he view non-Nords that have lived in Skyrim? Because say if you go to me, Skyrim has always, and I'm probably going to get a little flack for this, but next to perhaps Cyrodiil, I've always imagined Skyrim to be a lot more cosmopolitan, but at the same time a bit rustic compared to the rest of the provinces. For instance, if you go to the Rift, if you go to Nemalton, or if you go to Windhelm, you'll see other races that are there. Imagine my surprise when I saw that there was an Altmer nearby. I can't remember. I think it was one of the grave sites, an Altmer NPC nearby there, and then a few of the other races like a Redguard over by the stables and so on and so forth. There's evidence there that there are other races that inhabit Skyrim. What would Brynwulf say to these people?
Brynwulf would of course allow them to say, but Brynwulf is a very pragmatic person when it comes to valuing and judging people. If you come into Skyrim and you accept, or you value the Nord culture, you value the heroes and the deeds, and what makes their culture truly theirs, then he will likely have no quarrel with you. But a lot of elves, with arrogance and stuff, when you start, belittling or questioning the greatness and the pride of Skyrim and the heroes and the people, then Brynwulf is probably going to choke you to death. Brynwulf is not racist. At least I don't like to think he's racist by default. He's chauvinistic. And if you do not question Skyrim in any sense, if you do not belittle Skyrim, Brynwulf is not going to have an issue with you. It's just, when you make an issue about it, then Brynwulf will likely cut your throat.
So long as they respect Skyrim, he doesn't have a problem. Okay.
Because now, of course, with the community growing, we get people from different races as well. And, as long as they come, I come in peace. And, I respect the warriors of Skyrim. And I expect and I value the stories that we hear from Skyrim and its renowned warriors. Brynwulf will appreciate you and he will understand, you show respect to my people. And I will do my best to respect you. He's very pragmatic. He's very principled. He's driven by principles, I suppose.
What are some of his principles? Obviously, honor being amongst them, I would imagine.
To some sense, he isn't honorable in the knight sense. Like, if you drop your weapon or you drop your weapon, he isn't going to wait for you to pick it up because that's supposedly honorable thing to do. He's pragmatic, honorable, to the sense if you raise your sword and I will not walk away from it. I will challenge it equally because I'm honor bound to do so, as warriors often are. But it is like I'm going to spare you because you don't have a weapon, or I'm going to spare you because you're weaker than me. If he likes to equalize everyone on the same playing field, and I'm guessing he's honourable in that pursuit. There's other traits where he of course wants responsibility, and he tries to lead everyone, tries to provide for everyone the best he can, because he doesn't want people to starve and he doesn't want people to live poorly. So overall he's a kind guy, but you have to earn the kindness through work, and you have to prove, if you're willing to put in the work and the sweat and the responsibility to help Skyrim or to help Brynwulf people grow, then Brynwulf will do the same to you. Brynwulf is very much you get out of it what you put into it sort of fella.
Yeah, very egalitarian, sounds like. Okay, you mentioned Brynwulf having children before. Children or RPing as someone's child, or RPing involving sort of offspring, can get kind of dicey. Dicey is the best word I can put it. Do you have people RPing as Brynwulf's son or daughter? Is it something more of like their background props?
I have one person who plays Frieza, which is Brynwulf's only daughter, but she also plays the mother of the children. So I entrust the role player a lot to fill in those roles because she understands the characters that gave life to those children. Brynwulf and of course his wife, which is also played by her. So she understands the personality traits that likely would fall into these children. So I do agree. If you were to give children the roles to different people that don't know the parents' traits per se, it makes it very wonky, and it almost probably creates characters that walk away from the general guidelines and themes that you initially had in mind for them. Of course, people are people, and perhaps Brynwulf's children will greatly differ from himself. But I like to think that if I give them to people that understand the characters that they come from, that they are going to be roleplayed a lot more realistically and more convincingly as well. Having said that, the only characters that of the children are currently roleplayed is Frieza, which is Brynwulf's only daughter, and Wulfric, which is his oldest son, which is roleplayed by myself. And the reason I have that is pretty much almost purposely so, because Brynwulf's children are in their 20s, and I've done it on purpose on the idea that I play a character that is involved in the Tree-Banner War, is involved in a lot of conflict and a lot of roleplay as a result. And I'd like to think that eventually the consequences and the life of a war is going to catch up to Brynwulf. And while I don't want to lose everything from the character, I figured if I gave Brynwulf children which would be of the right age to, appropriately roleplay them, that when Brynwulf dies, surely the character dies, but his legacy and all the effort and all the work I put into the character kinda continues to live through the children, which I then would be able to roleplay. So to some sense, when Brynwulf dies, he doesn't necessarily die because his story lives on, and his personality and everything else, like his legacy, lives on in the children I could then easily pick up to roleplay from. It's a backup plan.
Right, that makes sense to me. So, moving on then, what are his children's relationship in relation to their parents? Is it do they talk to each other? Are they do they hate each other? That sort of thing. Is it a bit complicated? What's it like for, say, someone like Wulfric who has a father that is a thing? Does he find himself constantly under his shadow? What about Frieza? How does she look at the whole thing?
It depends on after. Generally, all the children are very well tied. Brynwulf's family is probably everything to him, so his children are on a good roof, and they, at least from the way I roleplay, they all love their parents. At least that's the plan. Wulfric does indeed kinda feel, and is always, of course, you see all the son. He feels the burden of responsibility, weighing on his shoulders, and especially when he was young, when they would go out and make trouble, as children often do, Wulfric would be the one who would always get the worst beating, because he would be the oldest, and in Brynwulf's time, when Brynwulf would be going to war on a mission by the Pact, wouldn't be home to supervise the children, or his wife wouldn't be able to, that role would always fall to Wulfric. And Wulfric, of course, being a young guy, a young child himself at the time, makes mistakes, and he realized and always felt that his punishment for those mistakes were always way more severe than that of his siblings, as is often probably the case with the firstborn children in many cases. They tend to be judged a lot heavier because they are the first who probably step into the shoes of the parents, at least especially the father. So Wulfric definitely feels the pressure, and he wants to do everything in his capability to prove that, if his father ever passes away, or that his legend is going to be his own legend, and is going to be spoken of, on the merits of what he did, and all. He doesn't want to be always remembered as, you're the son of Thane Brynwulf Mer-Bane. He wants, of course, to have that be a part, but not as the key of his entire existence. He wants to become known as Wulfric the hero, who is apparently also the son of Thane Brynwulf Mer-Bane. He doesn't want to be known as just the son of Brynwulf Mer-Bane. And on top of that, of course, when Brynwulf dies, he wants to not shame or bring shame to Brynwulf's legacy and family name if he does poorly. And Frieza is just a married young girl who, she looks at her parents, big eyes, especially at the father, the big war hero. Like children always, these girls, I know, there's always tend to look up a lot to their father, as I suppose young girls always do, because they're kind of like the first big protector and big man they ever, meet, and they're kind of, the person that always takes them under their wing and always, guides them through life and protects them from everything else. And Brynwulf Frieza is, of course, always the same. It's the father that, spoils her when she wants to be spoiled, but at the same time always keeps her hand above her head.
So it sounds like if there's ever the possibility of Brynwulf dying, which I imagine is something that it sounds like you have planned out, but at the same time, it's like you only have a few scenarios in your head. Would that be fair to say?
I have, if and when Brynwulf dies, I have a few scenarios on how it could go down. It's more the case like, I don't need Brynwulf to die next week, but I'm prepared when the time comes to accept it and go play on his children.
So with that being said, then, do you think Wulfric will have a set of big boots to fill?
I definitely think he has a set of big boots to fill.
Okay.
From what I've managed to do on Brynwulf in the roleplay throughout these years, I definitely say so. I do have to say, I think Brynwulf as a character, while I still really enjoy role-playing with him, he is becoming slowly but surely a means to an end. I've always now seen him more as a guiding character for the community. For me, is a tool to coordinate projects, to coordinate events, to make them work, because they need a character in a position that is able to maneuver and supply those events in characterly as well to make it believable. And I suppose Brynwulf for me is nothing but a tool to sustain that.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Ebonheart Pact community, the Skyrim community, and what you do for them. So what is it that you have Brynwulf do for these guys exactly?
Brynwulf governs one of the halls in the region, and as it stands, a lot of the warriors, a lot of the people in the Pact and Skyrim community have Nord characters that are sworn or are friends with Brynwulf. And what I personally do, when people need aid or they need questions or they need help, a lot of the characters come to Brynwulf because, being a Thane, he has contacts, he has supply, he kind of is the go-to guy if you want things cleared and understand more things and reach more things. And through that, he kind of, he tries to figure out things for you. He tries to supply your character with things. Most of the time, his quests is, he pretty much the guy who goes, there's trouble in the Southern Rift or somewhere in the Rift, and he's pretty much, he calls for a gathering of the warriors. The players that want to join those events can join in the meet hall, and Brynwulf will give them the quest, and he will assign either himself or one of the players as, the supervisor on this quest, and the players can bugger off to do the quest that I will provide to them. Like, the Thainship is really just a tool. It's a tool just purely for coordination, purely from a quest giver standpoint, because people tend to allow themselves, at least the characters allow themselves, to be a lot easier swayed and a lot easier given tasks when, of course, a character is a Thane, it seems, than anything else. It gives Brynwulf a certain measure of respect, certain tools to work with to sustain the roleplay more easily.
Okay. Talk about some of the community events. I was going to say something else, but talk about some of the community events that you helped coordinate.
Back in the day, we made Ebonheart Pact roleplay community because Now we all know the facing issue that ZeniMax had in the early stage of the game, and of course Stormhaven has Stormhaven roleplay. Covenant has Stormhaven roleplay. The Almere Dominion has Almere Dominion roleplay, and the Pact, of course, we had the Ebonheart Pact community roleplay guild, and it was set up by several lovely and great people, including Knight Redheart, which you've had an interview with before me. I remember, great guy, great. What I really like about Knight is his determination for the game and for roleplay in general. While of course I don't always agree with the character he plays or with the team he wants to roleplay, but I definitely have to applaud Knight's determination in giving back to the community and making an effort to sustain the community. I think in terms of that, he's probably one of the most valuable people the Ebonheart Pact community has today, definitely. And then we have Flexar, which helped us as well, and we had Lady Birdsong. Unfortunately, those people are no longer very active or no longer active in ESO, so there isn't a lot to tell about them any longer. But we made a community to try and gather as much Ebonheart Pact role players as we could to try and make a living, breathing Ebonheart Pact community. And we succeeded for a good couple of months and years even. We did several projects. We did the Risk Pride project. It was called the Risk Pride project, where we made a hub in a mountain. We did several big series. I made some series for the Ebon Drakes back in the day. And we did summer events, which were a week-long event series, most of the time with a very big storyline to it, a very massive and probably very impactful storyline. And we would gather the entire community and try to give the community a week-long roleplay where they would try and overcome these dangers and try to reduce this threat that was threatening a region or threatening a faction or whatever have you. And they were really great, and I still very much look back to them very fondly. However, through I think almost 2.5, 3 years of roleplay with the Ebonheart Pact, of course, there have been issues in the past as well, but eventually the community began to falter through some, looking back, unnecessary and almost painful drama that I probably don't want to go too far into, because I don't want to make a habit of shaming people, calling people out, because I guess a lot of people were at fault in the end. We all kind of allowed for it to happen, despite everyone's best effort to probably stop it. I eventually just withdrew when the community died out, and I just began role-playing on my own with the Ebon Drakes, before I figured, restarting the Ebonheart Pact community is probably too big to do by myself. So, I'm gonna make it smaller, and I'm gonna focus on the team that I enjoy the most, and that's the Nords. So, that's why I created the Pact and Skyrim project. And in turn, Knight made his Vardenfell roleplay project.
So talk to me about the Clans of Skyrim project. You essentially try to bring Skyrim to life, yes?
Yes, that is the goal. It's a very it's a very tough goal. It's a very big goal. I understand we'll probably never be able to make it breathing and come to life at full, but we wanted to establish for the Nord role players and people who enjoy role playing Nord culture and everyday Nord life, and kind of series and quests that surround Nords and their culture and their mythology, and what could happen to them. People who enjoy it, want to give them a place where they could come, mingle, and enjoy that sort of roleplay with us. Because I don't imagine all the Nords want to go to Wayrest and have a drink in the Cloudy Dregs.
How do you accomplish this? Do you do it through, obviously you do it through storylines, but what else do you do?
By providing just social roleplay and community services, like I said, event series like the End of the Winter events, like the campaign events, that sort of thing. Like we've got a new one coming up as well. I've listed several other events we are looking to do in the future. We just try to put our name out there by doing interactive events with different factions, with different groups, while still trying to sustain personal storylines And of course, we have our own Discord where we like to chat casually and just, be friends who all enjoy the same theme and all want to invest in the same theme with the same values to hopefully sustain that roleplay for as long as we like. And of course, I would very much like if you had like 300, 500 people, but I would rather have 20 or 10 people who are determined and who want to help generate good roleplay and enjoyable roleplay than 500 people who I never see.
I kind of understand that. Sure, you want a tight group of quality RPers, especially for, I don't want to say it's a niche, but yeah, it kind of is a niche that you're going for in the grand scheme of things with what you're planning, with what you're trying to do. But what are some of the more recent plots that you've done so far?
Through 3 months ago, we had the further, I think even we had the What Rests Beneath event series, which was a series that regarding the worm cult that sought to disrupt the ancient burrows underneath our player hall, Dragon Rest Hall. So the hall was eventually conquered by the worm cult with their own private army of risen lords. So we had a big series about it, which was very enjoyable. And I made custom dungeons, which is a new hobby of mine, making custom dungeons. It's really enjoyable. I think it really adds more dynamic to the event series. And after that, I think Christmas was coming around, so I wanted to do an event series for everyone, for one Tambriel in specific. So I reached out to several people, including Bjorsen and Richard and Smuts, which is Fangrim. Probably names you guys don't know, but they are people a lot of people probably will know. And I proposed to them the idea, guys, I have this draft, which was called the Endless Winter series. How would you guys like to do it with me? How would you guys like to provide a series in Hrofgar, which is largely neutral ground, that everyone could come to and everyone could enjoy roleplay with during the Christmas holidays, whatever like you. Pretty much like the summer series that we've done in the past. And just join for some good old-fashioned roleplay with, a story going through a big story and allow the characters that usually don't meet or usually don't get a chance to roleplay with one another because it doesn't make sense to actually get that opportunity. And I think we had around 40, 50 people at some point in the series. And I am still very insanely proud and insanely thankful that people entrusted me with the responsibility to, coordinate and to help make that, I suppose.
What was the premise for this Endless Winter?
The Endless Winter premise was remnants of the Winterborn dynasty, you go from the Hrofgar storyline. They made, through one of the Hagravens that led to one of the remnants, made a pact with Mehrunes Dagon. Supposedly Mehrunes Dagon, centuries ago, called one of his servers down upon Tamriel, who was Korgan, the father of Frost Atronachs, which was a massive Frost Atronach that lived in Skyrim and supposedly brought one of the harshest winters Skyrim had ever seen. And the Dunmer associate Mehrunes Dagon with, destruction and change and pretty much cataclysm, I suppose. So I think, it was fitting if this Korgan was called by Mehrunes Dagon to bring about an endless winter, a winter that would engulf all of Tamriel and would pretty much freeze Tamriel whole until it could be reborn under rule of Mehrunes Dagon and his followers. And the Richmond made a deal and recovered the heart of Korgan on the assumption that if they managed to, revive or bring Korgan back upon the world, that they would be spared and live through this endless winter, and when the winter would pass, that they of course would live as kings and rightful, pretty much like the promise the dragons make to the dragon priests. And the event series would take place in Hrofgar, and the Winterborn remnants, which would call themselves the Iceheart tribe in memory of an Iceheart, would of course disrupt and attack several orcish settlements. And one of the settlements that was attacked was a player settlement belonging to the lovely Fangrim and his Orc Guild. And through the story, we would all gather at Fangrim's stronghold, and we would all join arms against this threat of Iceheart, Richmond, and their devilish plans. And we would, do events where we would attack the settlements, attack their forts, disrupt their allies, cut off their allies altogether, until after, I think, 8 to 10 events, they would eventually defeat Ulga, the Frost Hag, as I've come to call her, which was the Hag Raven matriarch that aided Kellag, which was the chieftain of the Iceheart tribe, and disrupt their plans altogether.
Sounds like a time and a half and a hell of a headache to get through. I can only imagine, especially with 40 to 50 people.
It took way longer than there were some hurdles, because I had initially expected to pull so many people, but I was very thankful. I had the aid of my fellow DMs where I had it, and I figured, I made a lot of custom dungeons for it, because I noticed that eventually there was an instance problem where in instances where a lot of people use, of course, for events, because it looks, it looks pretty and it has good layouts. It only allows for 15 people. So I was pretty much logging in almost daily to work on a dungeon, because a dungeon allowed me to put 25 people into it in like the big house. I was using a Paradise Pinnacle for it. I was just building dungeons around the day, every day, to make, for the new series and for the new events, so that the atmosphere and the story and the visuals were always different. And I made caves, I made fortresses, I made the inside of fortresses. I even made a mountain as closure for the event series.
I can only imagine how much money you must have shelled out into all the decorations.
Let's just say, I think my girlfriend would be pissed if she found out.
Your secret's safe with me, even though
Thank
I now
you.
have.
I know the strangers on the internet that's going to hear this podcast.
Yes, and all you lovely strangers. We got to keep this secret.
For me, thank you.
we want Brynwulf to live. But okay, moving on. Switching gears over to what I now call the meta conversation, where we talk about more, I guess, abstract ideas or the state of things when it comes to ESO roleplay.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I want to talk about the European server as a whole and the RP population itself. When I was there on the European server, the Ebonheart Pact RP populace was, I get the feeling anyway, tremendously smaller compared to the other factions.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? What do you suppose it is about the Ebonheart Pact that makes people more gravitate more towards DC or AD, if you had to chalk it up to a few reasons?
I don't think it's a fault of the Ebonheart Pact as, a law faction. I don't think it's the fault of the appealing of the faction itself. It's more of a fault of the drama, I think, that unfolded. Because before the drama, we had quite a living population, quite a good number of people. Of course, European server has never been as big as the American server, so there's already that. But when the drama happened, we noticed a lot of people, rightly so, like, I'm not going to blame people, again, I'm not finger pointing, I'm not calling names, because I don't want to make that a habit of me. I know a lot of people migrated to the Covenant side, because the Covenant side at the time already had a good number of people. And I suppose the Covenant side has races that are very easy to, jump into. And perhaps it has also the culture to very easily jump into, whereas being a trading city, Bretons overall being quite acceptive folk, it has more of the tools to make very easy, accessible roleplay. And I guess with all the drama that was going on regarding Supernatural and whatever have you, that people think, it's not worth the headache, and I'm just going to migrate to Stormhaven roleplay. And when you would eventually come around, a lot of the damage had already been done, and a few loyalists remained, like Little Bastion remains. But even now, it's very hard to battle against the stigma that Ebonheart Pact roleplay has received through the years.
Do you think there's ever a chance of it ever getting back to what it was once before, or you think that the RP populace will ever get back into proportion?
That's tough. I don't think it will, but I don't think it will for any roleplay any longer. I noticed that a lot of roleplays start to fill niches, as is always the case. I don't think we will ever achieve a one-time real roleplay community because it's almost unrealistic. People fill in niches and people make guilds for niches, and the only thing you can do is if you want to explore and roleplay with a particular niche, you message the people inside a niche and as such begin roleplaying with them every once in a while. But a breathing world is probably impossible to achieve, and so I guess that for the Ebonheart Pact it's probably even tougher now. I no longer see the Ebonheart Pact and the Dominion and the Covenant anymore per se. I just see the AU roleplay community, and the AU roleplay community has just different niches that everyone wants to enjoy and everyone should enjoy to the best of their ability, and you can jump into all those niches whenever you like.
Okay. Getting into a more general question, and this is going to be a little bit of a weird question, but still. How has, role-playing or role-playing in an MMO affected your life outside of the screen, outside of the laptop? Or has it ever, been an influence? Have you found yourself, changed before and after roleplay? What's that been like for you, if there's been any effect?
I have to be honest. I wouldn't be able to think of something. I mean, I enjoy roleplay. I enjoy it as a good activity, and of course, when I'm at work, I think of plots for roleplay, and I think of event series I can host. But I don't know. Perhaps it made me more social. Perhaps maybe more acceptive as a person to perhaps nerdy things or people with, I suppose it helped me respect people's different hobbies, and that we should respect everyone for the things that they like. Like we shouldn't frown on gamers because they like playing video games. We shouldn't frown on people who like to sit at home watching TV rather than going out to a bar. Like if that's what they want to do, if that's their niche, then all power to them. I suppose that's kind of what it helped me. And people have things that they enjoy, perhaps some more conventional than others, but we'd have to accept that as long as, of course, it isn't criminally anything or something like that. But
Alrighty. It's just that question tends to not sideswipe, but I don't want to blindside up people because they never really given it much thought. The computer.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a very tough question because it's one of those questions where you don't realize and you don't think of it at all. Life is life, and you don't exactly sit down at the end of the day and think, what has roleplay done for my daily life today?
Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, we now draw to a close with the famous Bernard Pivot 10-item questionnaire, first created by Marcel Proust, used by host Bernard Pivot in a French series called Bouillon de Culture, and most notably used in Inside the Actor's Studio by James Lipton. 10 questions, that's all you have before we're finally finished out, finally released from this torture.
Yay. We give Brynwulf a sock. Brynwulf is finally free.
Alright, 10 items. Here we go. Number 1. What is your favorite word?
I suppose dog. I just get happy from dogs, so I suppose dog is my favorite word. But okay. As a man, probably sex, I suppose. I mean, which guy doesn't, jump up when people say sex? Just tilt your ears up, I suppose.
What is your least favorite word?
Cancer.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
A good story.
What turns you off?
Violence. Just, watching the news with all the shit going on in the world these days. I watch the news, but I almost purposely try not to watch the news anymore because there's so much negativity going around, and it just impacts your daily life. It downhearts your spirit. So I'd say, just the general shit that is things going on in this world these days.
Number 5. What is your favorite curse word?
I'm guessing fuck. It's probably the word I use the most. For fuck's sake and fuck you and...
Number 5A. What is your favorite Dutch curse word?
Gaskop.
What does that mean?
Cheesehead.
Cheesehead?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just so Dutch. Cheese.
Okay, alright. Number 6. What sound or noise do you love?
In my house we have these wooden floors and stone tiles, and I have a dog. And every time if I'm just sitting and I have the doors open or something like that, I occasionally hear like this very rapid tapping on the floorboards and on the tiles, and it's the little paws of my dog just tapping all happily, and it makes me feel good for some reason. It makes me enjoy things.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Nails on the chalkboard. Oh, that just gets me going. God fucking do I hate it. Just screeching in general. I don't like loud screeching noises.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Artist. Digital artist, probably. I'm just jealous of people who can make great commissions. I'm sorry. I wish I had even a tiniest fraction of the talent to draw my characters and draw my imagination to life.
What profession would you not like to do, ever in a million years that can pay you enough to do it?
Politician. You can never do it right. Good. You can never do it right. You can never do it. Well, there's no good or bad or anything. So, like politicians, you just always hate them, no matter what happens. So, no.
True. And finally, for our last question, if heaven exists, if it does, what would you like God to say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You're late. You should have been here years ago.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of this episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. Brynwulf, thank you so much for joining me and sticking with me for a second time. It's sincerely appreciated. I know that having to go back and do it a second time through all of this again was a little bit annoying, but still, you are a real trooper. Thank you.
I dare say it probably went easier this time, perhaps, but...
And to you, dear listeners, thank you for sticking with us once again for another episode. We're signing off now. We'll see you in the next one.